So I printed out the SCCA quick reference sheet that I was talking about in the last video. The full instruction manual is a lot longer, so this is a condensed quick reference of the most common mods and how it affects classing. It begins with the street class, where you can't really do anything to the car aside from the most basic upgrades, all the way up to prepared and modified, which is a full-on race car. You can see that the Evo is classified as D Street. This applies to the 8, 9, and the X. So you can find these online, and they're very helpful as you determine your upgrade path in terms of mods. If possible, it would be nice to stick in street and work your way up from there, but as we know, many Evos already have their ECU tuned, bigger turbos, cams, and that already bumps you up to SM, where it's really competitive. Each class inherits the mods from the previous one. The reason they do this is for fair competition. First of all, they want to make sure that the car you're running is grouped with similar cars. Some people will walk around and call you out if you have something that's not class legal. Again, it's for fair competition. That's the whole purpose of classing, so that you know where you stand with other drivers in a similar car and similar setup. So you just picked up a new Evo. Even more likely, a modified Evo of some sort. First thing I would check is your typical maintenance: oil, your brakes, your brake pads, tires. You have to have a working engine. You have to have a working drivetrain. That includes clutch, the gearbox, rear differential. Even though you're not going really quick, you are in second gear, sometimes close to red line on the high-speed section of courses, so the engine has to be working correctly. At the same time, you want to find out what's not working on the car and address those. In my case, the front KYB shut was blown. It had around 93,000 miles and a lot of rust, so when you push down on the car, it was bouncing. Again, I know it is autocross. It's not a high-speed track, but you want to have a good sense of maintenance when you're doing any kind of motorsports. Any bad habits you have here will just manifest itself as you get better and better. Another issue I had at the time was caliper slides were also seized, so I could not get brake pads in or out without using a hammer. Finally, if the car is modded, you want to know what the mods are and where you stand in terms of classing. And this is where it gets quite difficult, because a lot of these used Evos have all sorts of mods left and right. If there's been 4 or 5 owners, there's a good chance that it hasn't been documented well, if at all. Even I don't know every last thing that's been done to this car. I'm still finding new things here and there all the time. So again, that's why I prefer a stock car, or as close to stock as possible. Just to go over some of these items highlighted. Many people aren't aware that the cold air intake automatically bumps you up a class, as with ECU mods or the typical high flow cats. A lot of these cars have the catalytic gutted, removed, and you're running a test pipe. Prepared, I would really point to tires, because if you're doing if you remove the EGR, for example, and you're still running stock tires, I mean, look at this list of things that a lot of competitive people would have done already. If you're running stock 235 tires on the factory size rim, you're going to be outclassed. There's no way around that. And a lot of these things are typical of Evo mods. A lot of cars have cams already up when they do the upgraded turbo, injectors, fuel pump. This stuff will easily bump you up several classes. My own car, I'm running in an open class in my group, but I know for sure in terms of horsepower and mods, this is a SM car. But a lot of SM cars, street modified, are running slicks, whereas I'm still on 265 street tires. If you're really serious about being competitive, there's no way around it. You need to have a second set of slicks. As I mentioned, I'm not that serious about the sport, so for me, since I'm just doing it for fun, I just have one set of tires for street and autocross. And I barely drive this car. It gets maybe 100 miles in the last year. So what are the benefits and drawbacks of open classing? If your group doesn't class cars, one of the benefits is that you could just go out there and start driving. And this is assuming that your car passes tech inspection. The drawback is that it's hard to compare where you stand compared to other drivers and cars. My group, we usually have around 40 or 50 entrants. I could be competing against cars that are stripped down to bare shells, dedicated race cars. I mean, it's really hard to determine where you stand. Some people come in with bone stock Honda Accords, so you get the point. It's just really hard to compare apples to apples when you don't have classing. Even with the same exact year, make, and model, this Evo, you could have someone who barely did bolt-ons. You could have someone who has a gutted interior. You could have someone with aero mods, which I don't even have. In autocross, seat time is the most important, so just start driving. Be aware of what mods you have. You could always, for the most part, remove them if you want to go down a class. I will say early on that you don't want to make too many changes to the car at one time. Let's say that you want to change coilovers and sway bars at the same time. Well, you're really not sure what changed what, especially if they both have adjustments. A lot of coilovers have two-way or three-way adjustments. A lot of sway bars are adjustable. When you have that many variables, it's hard to focus on driving because you'll constantly be tinkering with different things, not knowing what did what.